And the great thing is, at the end, you walk away with this giant stack of heavy paper with your image on it, and you just feel like you just got away with murder, and you have gold, and you just beam the whole time. Then you walk home, and it's very exciting.
The Brandywine is a hands-on kind of experience. The press that's there is a press that really doesn't exist anymore. It's now an archival press that now becomes this extraordinary resource because what gets made on it is now so rare. It preserves a certain kind of history without it being old-fashioned. So the material that's getting produced on it is modern, but the richness and the quality of the printmaking that happens on it is now unique and becomes more rare as it gets developed. And the opportunity for artists to come and experiment on this machine, which is obviously a machine that still works very well, is a unique experience in America.
The first location was 1923 Brandywine Street. It was a two-story garage in the middle of a block of row houses, and it was a street that was mixed. It had some commercial businesses, some garages, it had some housing, residential units, but our building was about 15 feet wide and about 40 feet deep. Very small space. It had no cross ventilation, it had no air conditioning, we didn't have an exhaust system. We basically had a garage door, and in the summertime when the weather was good, we'd open the garage door and let the fumes exhaust out. But you have to understand, we started with no money in '72.
It was a small garage kind of space with things very layered one on top of the other, almost everything handmade or found. I think you would say it was pretty basic. My memory is that Sam Gilliam told me when he got there to do prints, he was surprised there wasn't a professional drying rack for the prints, and that was when Alan got the drying rack for prints.
The rent was paid by the artist. The phone bill was paid by the artist. The artist donated their time teaching. It was a pure volunteer endeavor until 1974, when we became incorporated as a tax-exempt entity, and then we could go out and start fundraising.
It was really Alan's commitment to issues of diversity that I think marked Brandywine. There wasn't a lot of money, and so it was always a matter of finding the funds to do the projects that were important. The scope was bigger than printmaking. Outreach projects in the community, mural projects, and educational projects for school children always were part of what was important to Brandywine.
It was about our culture, it was about our youth, and about creating opportunities to in a way, kind of like build a bridge between their aspirations as far as culture and being visual artists. In pursuing that path in the early 70s, there just weren't a lot of role models. So we saw the need in the community to support the young people, to help get them ready for college, and then when they were, actually in college, is to be able to support them, to guide them, to give them the kind of support and encouragement they needed. And we were visual artists, somewhat very successful. Others were educators. And we saw ourselves as a role model. We saw the need to put ourselves in a position where we could, on a consistent basis, mentor the young people and show them some things, some skills, as far as working in the art practice, but also give them exposure to museums and galleries and to successful artists, be they in Philadelphia or in some other community. Bob Blackburn was legendary in the printmaking workshop field. In 1948, and he started a print workshop, which was thriving. And in the 70s, when I first came in contact with him, visited with Bob, it was really, really thriving. I mean, I'd walk into his space and he'd have people from Argentina, Africa, Brazil, Europe, different states. Brandywine's model, though, looked at Bob, it looked at some of the commercial print shops, it looked at the university print shops, it looked at master printer programs like Tamron and so forth. And we just decided that if we were going to do something, it had to be about quality, that we had to show standards. We had to expose not only the students but some of the artists. We had to expose them to a standard that was high enough that their work would indeed compete in the wider field, in the wider world of fine arts. And so we decided that we would function as a residency program, where for a short period of time, a week or 2 weeks, an artist would come in and they would have full access to the staff and the facilities at no expense to them, and produce an edition of prints.
Brandywine gave a lot of artists the same kind of experience that I'd had at Tamron, and the same ability to produce things they could not produce on their own. Other thing was important is that, I'll never forget this, is that there were people in Philadelphia who said they were into arts and stuff like that, and they didn't know anything about prints. Alan introduced a lot of the community to people like Richard Hunt, John Scott, Mel Edwards, just a number of people. I mean, Jake Lawrence here, Romy Bearden, sent me the Vanity Award. It was just, people don't know how important that was for that time, and it really is, so,
Brandywine shifted to offset lithography around 1982. At that time, we had spent the first 10 years exclusively in screen printing because that's what we could afford. And at the same time, we realized that in order to be more proficient at what we do, we needed to be more consistent about the quality of the printing. Our first presses were large cylinder stream-fed presses, and they required not a lot of labor, but they required much more paper. The fact that it was planographic, we were able to acquire some fine ball grain plates which could hold detail, could hold blends, washes, and by drawing on Mylar and perfecting that in a way that we could get from the mylar to the plate, these aluminum lithographic plates, and reproduce a tone, a line, or a texture that resembled that which you could produce on a stone litho by hand.
Brandywine is a place where artists can connect and experiment and do things that they could never do in their own studio.
This is Cedric Huckabee, and this is the 99%, and they're portraits of 102 people who he drew as he observed them.
I think the fact that I was able to work there was a great honor because there's so many wonderful works in the history of Brandywine, people from all walks of life. And it's a wonderful work that, that can be given and experienced by many.
If you as an artist have some vision and you want whatever it is and you want to say it, there will never be a stop here.
Works on paper, thinking about the idea of social reflection from Daumier to Diego Rivera. It's a traditional thing of art for the people, and it's accessible. And that's what I love so much about Brandywine, and its continual pursuit to have that in a time like this, where things are a little more restricted economically, you know, in the marketplace.
In this room, I walk and there are dozens and dozens of flat files and hundreds of drawers. I thought, where could I begin? I have no idea how to begin. I'm looking at this room and I'm flabbergasted.
The Brandywine Workshop archives is a real treasure. It has three components. It has the papers, which is the history of Brandywine and the history of the artists that have worked with Brandywine. It has the artwork, which is the prints that were produced during the Visiting Artists program. The artwork also includes works that have been traded and donated to our permanent collection. We've exchanged with the Experimental Print Workshop in Cuba, Self-Help Graphics in Los Angeles, and a number of artists, Bob Blackburn's collection. We've taken on collections of other print workshops and individual artists. And so it's a rich collection of woodcuts, lithographs, etchings, monoprints, collage prints, and it really is like a survey of printmaking in the United States in the second half of the 20th century.
Printmaking isn't a static process. It's a process that's undergoing a lot of experimentation.
It's definitely different.
The whole thing we're talking about here is communication. I mean, we have these incredible tools to communicate today over worldwide distances. And Philadelphia is learning how to do that as an important cultural resource center for the world, not just for Philadelphia, but for the world. And these are world-class things that are happening in Philadelphia, and the Brandywine is one of them.
I think Brandywine's been successful to this point because we've anticipated a change and we've been on the curve of change, you know, in our thinking about diversity, and our thinking about process and printing, and our thinking about what are the sustainable things that an institution need? What are the resources and tools institutions need to exist longer term?